Hello and welcome to Chapter Chat with Sarah. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, and we'll have more on that later. But first, today's guest is Katie, and Katie is a true life character in both of my books. Katie, you are chapter 14 in the book Healing Your Life One Leaf at a Time, and the subtitle that you chose was Fight or Flight. This is how I have lived most of my life. What did that subtitle mean to you? Because that was powerful, and it did a good description of what life has been like for you.
Well, I can say that, from a very early age, I always felt like, I had to be there in the moment. I had to get it right. There was no room for mistakes anywhere. I always felt like, it was either fight for my life and do this right or get out somehow. And it was always in the back of my mind, especially after my mother married my stepfather, that the word flight it was so imminent in my memory, to get out, get out, get out, no matter how, just get out.
Yes, you had a lot to deal with for sure. I mean, unbelievable situations for you and your siblings and your mother. And you were the oldest in the family. So I would imagine that put so much more pressure on you. So how many siblings did you have? And being the oldest, what did that mean as far as you felt it was, maybe your responsibility or how you had to be? So kind of fill us in a little bit.
Well, altogether, I had 7 siblings. I have a brother that passed away when I think he was 9 months old. And then I have a sister that was adopted at birth to another family. So altogether, I have 7 siblings. But I went through life with 5. And, the responsibility, it seemed like I was actually the mother instead of being the older sister. I was always having to take care of the babies or feed the baby or bath the baby or see what this one's doing, get this one out of that. And, it was an adult responsibility put on a child.
So you didn't have a lot of playtime then. You had more, it was expected that you would help take care of your brothers and sisters.
Exactly. I don't remember having hardly any, what you could say, playtime, being outside. Like I'd see, other children outside, and, the little girls would be pushing their dolls and their little strollers, or the boys be on bicycles, and stuff. But I was always made to stay in, take care of this, or take care of the house, or do the laundry, or, it was, like I said, it was just adult responsibilities that was put on a child that was having to be the adult.
And I think that does happen a lot of times with the oldest child, but maybe more so back in the era that, when you were a child. I think things are a little bit different now, but were you kind of a poorer family, or was the mother and father kind of tell us about, you said stepfather, so then you had a real father at some point, and then was there a divorce and your mom remarried? Maybe I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm just trying to get a picture of, why was it that you had this major responsibility?
Well, my mother and my father were married until I was about 7 years old. And, you got to remember, I'm an old woman now. I'm, in my early 70s. So, that was many, many years ago. And back then, unless it was flaunted, people never knew if they were rich or poor. But, now I can look back on it and I can tell you, we were poor. My dad worked for the railroad, but he was a drinker, and he loved to spend his paycheck at the bars, getting drunk. And he, liked the girls and the women. So he, spent all of his money and time doing that instead of being home, being a dad. And so my mother and father divorced when I was about 7. And then we were on welfare. And that, when the life started getting really, really hard, my mother was accused of neglect and she went to prison and she spent time in prison. We spent time in foster care. And that's where the stepfather came in, was after she got out of prison, she had to be married and had to have a home. And they set all these rules for her to have to follow. So she got married, and that's when hell broke loose.
So, what was it that caused her to be accused of neglect? Because in the book, you described that there really wasn't neglect. It was a family situation that, caused her to be turned in. So,
Right.
that was devastating to all of your lives because had that not happened, things could have turned out a whole lot different. But, I want them to know about your mother. Was she neglecting you or was this?
No, mom never neglected us. She done everything in her power to, make sure that we were taken care of, that, we had food and all those things that any child would have. What happened was my father's sister, biologically an aunt, but we'll not talk about that. But she decided that she didn't like my mother. She didn't like her ways, didn't like the way she done my dad or anything. So she decided she was going to turn my mother into the social services, which back then was welfare. And she turned her in as neglecting us and not taking care of us, leaving us at home alone, and all these things. And it caused an investigation. And at the end of the investigation, we were taken to court. My mother had to go in front of the judge, and the judge ruled with the welfare that we had been neglected and everything, and we were taken away and put into foster care.
What was that day like? I mean, give us a little bit of, because you were in court the day, right? All together,
Yeah.
the kids. Yes. So tell us about that.
Well, that morning, the social worker came because my mom didn't have a car, you know. So she came and she took mom and all 5 of us children at the time, took all of us to court. Well, we had to stay out in the hallway, and mom was inside the courtroom in front of the judge. And I guess she had a lawyer, things like that. But it seemed like it was forever before we heard anything or anyone opened that door or anything. And then sometimes it just seemed like it was the next instant. But they opened the door, and this lady come out, and she started gathering up this child to go this way, this child to go this way, and saying, I'll take these, you take these, and this. And I could see my mom, I could see her in the courtroom, but she wasn't coming out. And I asked this lady, I said, when are we going home? And she never said nothing. So then these women started just getting a hold of us and packing us out of the courthouse and putting us in these cars. And, then they said, well, we're going to put you in foster home. And, after that, I didn't see my mom for the longest time. I mean, they took her and they put her in prison.
Wow. She
And
didn't even get to say goodbye or explain anything.
no,
No.
no, there was no explanations for anything. They and I kept telling them this social worker, I knew her, she had been our social worker, and I was calling her by name and yelling at her and calling her all kinds of this and that, and and kicking her and everything, just saying, I just want to talk to my mom. What's going on?
Oh,
You know,
gosh.
and it was there was just, and all the kids were just crying and screaming, and these strangers, had hold of them. We didn't know who they were. It was it was terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like, just a horrible way to be separated from your mother, without, helping you understand what was happening, and how long and why was she going away, etc. So it had to be a very, very terrible and traumatic day in your life, more so than the others, because you were the oldest. You'd have a better understanding, but I'm sure that your siblings had a very, very hard day too.
Yeah.
This is season 2 and the podcast, and we want this to be about overcoming and finding joy and, listening and new experiences and making the best possible, even if you have some dark and painful memories. And, Katie, you have several years. I don't even want to try to start to add them up, but many in your life. But before we close, and we're not ready to close, I want to come back to this and you tell us about believing for better and overcoming that. Your story is very sad, but there's some highlights, and a lot of that pertains to, having grandchildren and kids and on finding God. So are there some life lessons and advice that you could help to share that you think are significant?
Well, I always grew up believing that I didn't know who God was, but I always heard people when they were talking or when something would go wrong, they'd always yell out to this God, or you'd see people kneel down and, they'd be sobbing and they just start talking about God and Jesus. And I grew up believing that there was something there, that made something. I didn't know what, but it seemed like it had to be better than anything I had. And I kept following that throughout my life. When things would go wrong, I found myself saying, God, now, or God, you got to help me, and still not knowing who God was. But then when I found God and I knew what happened and I knew who this person was, that made all the difference in my life because I had someone I could talk to. I had someone who would listen and not just say, "Oh, I don't know about that now," but someone that was there and would say, "It's okay. You're going to be okay."
Hmm.
And I just kept believing throughout my lifetime that somehow, some way, things would be better. I made a lot of mistakes, throughout my young life, as an adult and everything. I made a lot of mistakes. And the best thing, I guess, that ever happened to me was when I started having children and knowing that there is better for children.
Yeah, and you expound on how much you love those children and grandchildren all the time. And so I think this is a good time to segue then into the situation after your mother was out of prison and married your stepfather, how horrible that life was that just then shaped you to be the person you are today. You had to overcome so much, having, like you said, the children come into your life. You decided that they were not going to live or have the kind of life that you did. So could you share a little bit about, your mom being released? She met this guy and you thought this was going to be great, and it just didn't turn out that way. It was devastating. So I'm not putting words in your mouth. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, when she got out of prison, like I said earlier, they gave her a lot of rules and stipulations, that she had to do before she would ever get us back as a family. So she met this man. She was working in a little diner in her hometown, and she met this man. He was a truck driver, and she thought that this was, going to be just the greatest thing on earth. That, he was there. He was going to shower her with gifts. He was going to buy her a home. So they got married. They bought a home and they got us back from foster system. And everything was, everything seemed to be good for a while. But then it was like this man turned into Satan. There's tried over the years to find a better word for him, but I can't, and I hate that because he's my youngest brother father. But, I can't think of a better word than Satan. Our lives just changed tremendously after he came into it. We suffered every kind of abuse that there is, not leaving any of them out. I mean, we were beaten, we were sexually abused, we were emotionally abused. It was just a horrible, horrible life.
I know. In the book, some of the descriptions of what you went through are beyond understanding. And the reviews tell that too from all of the readers. So it was horrible. And I just think that your mom was taken away for neglect, and she wasn't abusing you. She wasn't hurting you. She was trying to work and provide. And the system and then requirement to meet someone and marry someone, and she ends up marrying, like you said, you felt like Satan, the devil, or whatever. What did this accomplish? It just made the whole situation worse. It's so hard to understand that that's how things had to turn out.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I really don't understand what if it didn't accomplish anything. I mean, the only thing that it accomplished was that we were with our mother and we managed to stay there. But that was with a price too.
Right.
My stepfather, he decided, that he was going to hold that over my mother's head as long as he lived. That, if she left him or she decided she didn't want to be there or she wanted to take us away, that he would turn her in for the same thing and she would lose us all over again. And my mother wouldn't have been able to stand that. She just would. And she decided to stay. That way she could have her children with her.
Well,
And
your mother suffered too, right? I mean, so it was not just the control that she was going to lose, but he was abusing her as well.
exactly. I mean, I have seen her beaten beyond recognition. I mean, where I knew she was my mother, but she didn't look like her.
Gosh.
He would mentally and physically abuse her. He raped her, just everything. There was I don't even know the word that I'm looking for, but he had no mercy for nothing.
And it seems like, I mean, he knew that she had 5 children. So it was like this was in his design of what it was going to be like when he wanted to marry her. He's taking on 5 children and a wife. And then you spent years of abuse, like you said, sexual, physical, emotional. So he must have had that in mind when he asked her to marry him. It's frightening for sure.
Yeah, and he never had met us. He didn't know us from Adam. He just knew that there was 5 children.
Wow. Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a lot of Satans in this world. There's a lot of children going through the same thing that we went through still today with all the technology and the different government offices and the different people that are in offices now that people can reach out to. There are still those Satans in this world.
There truly is. And I think that social media now brings a lot more to our attention. Years ago, we weren't exposed to all the things that are happening, the trafficking and of children, etc. So definitely scary times, and there is a lot of evil surrounding us. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a trusted resource for therapy, and it's one that helps you right from the comfort of your own home. It's their mission to make receiving therapy easier and to also match you with the right therapist. It's comforting to know that you have a place to turn when things in your life seem blurred and hopeless. To get started, go to betterhelp.com/Sarah Shaw, and you'll receive 10% off your first month of therapy. You can also find this link in the podcast description and on my website. Once again, the place to turn, and the link is betterhelp.com/Sarah Shaw. I think that, what in your life was your deepest regret, you think, or after, leaving home, or, you know, what makes you the happiest now? Or when you look back, I mean, there's got to be, some things like, I wish I would have changed this or did this a little bit different, or gosh, I remember when I did this, this was like one of the best days of my life. So, I want to try to add some positives in here from all of the darkness that you faced.
Well, I think my deepest regret, there's a lot of them, but I think what sticks out in my mind the most is knowing that when I left my siblings to deal with what I was trying to escape. And I think that's the worst regret I have, is because I couldn't take them away. I couldn't stop their pain. I didn't care about mine. I wanted to stop their pain. And I carried that with me for years and years and years, because I told my mom years ago that, I would help look out for them. I would try to keep them, safe. And I felt for many years that I let my mother down, but realized though that, I couldn't change it. I could only just be there if they needed me,
Right.
but I couldn't change what, they done with their lives, or who they done what with in their lives or anything, so those would have to be their mistakes or their accomplishments at their time.
Right, right. And I mean, I understand, like, you grew up most of your childhood taking care. And so I understand your, thinking like, okay, that my job wasn't done. I should have, but you couldn't have changed anything for them. That situation with your stepfather and with your mom wasn't going to get better or change. So you would have just been still going through all of it. So I hear the struggle that you have over it, but I just don't see, how that would have made things better. I don't know. I mean, you were there.
Right. And I don't dwell on it now like I did years ago, but I that regret is still there, because there were times, like there was one time, I held a gun to this man's head and was going to kill him, because at the moment he was beating on my mother. And I hate to get off track here, but and I wondered, many years, if that would have helped anything, if I would have just shot him and let him die, if things would have been different. And, they would have been different,
Right.
but would it have been for the better?
Yeah, it would have, changed the course of your life for sure. And it had to affect everybody. I mean, it would have stopped the pain, but it would just have brought on something, you know, more horrible. I don't know. Yeah, and that would be a lot for you to live with too. But
Yeah.
I can understand, like, you have the feeling that you got to do something to stop the madness. We're all suffering
Yeah.
here.
And it just, when you're in a position and you've got, your younger siblings, and you feel like you're responsible for them, what do you do?
Yeah.
You sit every day and try to figure out, how can I make this better? How can I get this done? How can I get them out of there? And it's like I said, it wasn't about me. It was about trying to help them.
Right, right. Yeah, you just wanted the suffering to stop. So,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm glad that you didn't do it, but I
Well,
certainly
they
can.
do now.
Yeah. But I can picture like being, to that breaking point. That's like this got to stop. This is bad. And you know what? He could have ended up killing your mother or one of you too with the
Exactly.
beatings and
I mean, everyone's got a breaking point, and it it's sad when you get to that point.
right. And it ties us right back to your subtitle, fight or flight.
Yeah.
That was so fitting to describe, you know, your breaking point. Like this is enough. I can't do this anymore.
And, the good things, I'm sure, growing up there were good times. I don't remember any, but I'm sure there was. But, I think my greatest accomplishment and what really changed my life was when I had my children. My children were my saving grace. They gave me a purpose to be here, to want to go on, to try to forgive where forgiveness is needed, and to let them be children. And I wanted them to have a good life, a better life. And I done that. You can't change what your children do after they leave home or when they become legal age. You can't change it. You can only pray that they make the right decisions. And to say that mine did, I can't fully say that they did, but I can't fully say that they did. They made some bad decisions, but they were my saving grace. They were what gave me a purpose. And I believed in God then. I knew who God was. And I knew that for me, life might still be hard, but I was going to do everything in my power to make it a good life. And I've had a good life for the most part since then.
That's good to know. I mean, and so deserving with, having such a challenging and, abusive life to go through with, your siblings, watching your siblings suffer, watching your mother suffer. I mean, that's a lot of trauma and, PTSD. I mean, there's got to be things that you might see even at your age now that kind of brings it all rushing back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can, which I don't go out much anymore, but, when I used to go out shopping and groceries and all those things, I could see someone just take their hand and just backhand a child on the head or something. And it was like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
Right, right.
And then all these things come rushing into your mind, it's just a lot of stuff. And there's just triggers everywhere.
Yeah, I would imagine like watching a television show, you would have to, turn
Yeah.
away or something. Yeah, because it is. It's like that part of our brain that brings it all rushing back, and that makes it hard. So I'm so happy to have this time for us together and for you to be sharing with the listeners that, there are some dark days in the past, but you still have a strong connection with your siblings, a respect and love for your mom. She was in a bad situation that she didn't cause, someone else did. And that you're here today, saying that, I want better for other people. So is there something that you want to say for the listeners that maybe gives someone who's struggling or has some issues going on that would give them hope?
The best thing I could say is to keep going. Don't give up. Keep going. Sometimes, somewhere, somehow, something better is going to be there. And when it is, grab on, because that could be your way out. And don't ever keep quiet. If there's something going on and you know it's not right, say something. Tell someone. It doesn't matter if you're 5 or if you're 75, because abuse doesn't have no age. It comes in all races, colors, genders. It doesn't matter. But if something's going on and you know it's wrong, say something.
Yeah, that's good. It's giving hope because, like I said, here you are today, looking back, and you did survive it, and only by the grace of God did you survive it. Because if anyone picks up that book, Two Sisters and the Four-Leaf Clover, and then also Healing Your Life One Leaf at a Time, because you have your stories in both books, they would be blown away at just how horribly bad your childhood was.
The books, they're good, and, they're good reading and all that, and tell our story, but at the same time, that's just a piece of it.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And there was other that I did know when writing and interviewing, and I, just wasn't able to include it all, but it was all shocking. And what made me feel good afterwards was the reviews, the people, the outpouring
Yeah.
of and compassion for each of you. I think that, and I don't want to speak again for you, but it helped to bring some healing.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It was so hard through the years to find someone that would, just believe us. That's all we ever wanted, someone to believe what we were saying. And everyone just kept turning a deaf ear, family, friends, it didn't matter. They just couldn't believe it because, it just seemed so impossible. But, and then you came along and we started talking and stuff, and it's like, wow, she really believes us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nobody could make up what you were telling. And, and we didn't use real names when we wrote the book to help protect identities. We never intended to hurt anyone else, just tell the story. But so it wasn't like you were trying to gain attention.
Oh,
It was
no.
just, no, it was expressing that maybe by telling your story, if you can just help somebody else, that would be something good to feel about, sharing that. But again, like I said, the healing part of being able to talk out loud and just, have a voice. I'm so grateful that I believe that because the death of my mom that we were brought together and God put it on my heart. So I will
Yeah.
forever be grateful that I have my cousins now as a part of my life, and it's very special to me.
Right. But the whole point of this is, like you said, helping someone else. And from my perspective, if I can help one person, just one, to get through the hard and horrible times in life, then it's all worth it. Because
Absolutely
that's one person that will find peace.
right. Give hope that there is an opportunity, there is ways to survive this. So Katie, thank you for taking the time today to share the story. Is in closing, if is there anything else that you'd like to close with?
The only thing that I would, I guess, like to say is find God, believe in God, know that God died for you and your sins, and that there's something better coming. But just don't give up. Don't ever give up.
Those are powerful words and powerful advice. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here today. And I look forward to us connecting again.
Oh, thank you so much. And before I forget, congratulations on your book award.
Oh wow. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm deeply humbled and honored by that. So it was a nice blessing to receive for sure. So thank you. So that's all for today. You can find both of my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookstores. Until then, remember this verse. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10.